Hello, my crafty friends. Nicole here, and welcome back. This pair of projects is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. It's based on a very classic sketch. It's called an Inchie, and if that's not apparent to you why yet, you're going to find out soon enough. So welcome to Sketch Starters with Nicole. As you can see, this sketch features 4 squares together, and the idea behind an Inchie is that each of those squares should be about an inch in size. This seems like a really simple sketch, but I know a lot of people get tripped up on it, so I've got 2 great projects that really showcase how you can use the Inchie as more of a background than the actual front-facing focal point. For my first project, I'm going to do a watercolor application, and I'm using the watercolor brush markers, the Spring Garden set. I've pulled out 4 shades: Midnight Violet, Rubelite, Autumn Blaze, and Warm Sunshine. To start this project, I need to lay out the squares on my piece of watercolor card. So I'm using the lines on my mat to align my watercolor cardstock, and then I'm use my T-square to make the lines. So I need to create a center line, both vertical and horizontal, and I want my squares to be slightly above the center line on the horizon. So I've raised that line just a little bit. And then I'll come back and start building in some borders because I don't want these squares to bump up right against each other. So I'm taking about 1/16 of an inch on either side of the horizontal and vertical centers to create that border. Once I have that border in place, I'm going to go ahead and work out where each of those 4 squares are going to be. And they're going to be approximately an inch. I felt like an inch was just slightly too small. So for this project, the blocks will be 1 1/8 inches. And I'm using, again, my grid along with the T-square to make sure that I have those aligned. And in the end here, you will see that I end up with 4 squares and a whole bunch of extra lines. So I'll bring in a eraser just to erase those lines ahead of time, and then I won't have to worry about them later. Then I can go into the watercoloring. So I'm using a wet on wet technique. I've taken a water brush with just plain water inside, and I will go ahead and outline an individual square and fill it in with water. I'll use the same technique for all 4. So I'll show you this first one here in basically real time, so that way you can see exactly how it works, and then we'll speed through the remaining 3. So I make sure that I get right up against the line and add enough water so that way when I put in the liquid watercolor, it has an opportunity to spread pretty quickly. If I leave it too dry, there's a chance that the ink will just kind of saturate into the paper and it will leave an unsightly circle or line. And I really just want it to spread right away. So I'll get in my first color here, which is Midnight Violet, and then start adding in some water to move that color around. If I want to add a little bit more color to create more saturation, that's perfectly acceptable. So that's what I do here. And I just keep adding in a little bit of water and then starting to spread the color around, keeping the water inside the square, which is actually pretty easy to do. Because I've created some surface tension with the water, it's not going to want to run outside of the lines of the square. So as long as I take my time and just kind of help the color along, it's going to stay within the square and I won't have any problems keeping that perfect shape. I don't want these squares to look perfectly even, so I just kind of swizzle the color around and let it do what it wants to do. For my next square here, I'm using Rubelite. I already have the water in place, so I'm just showing you the color addition. And again, I'll just put in a drop or 2 of color and then move it around with my water brush to get it to cover all 4 corners of the square and then start to swirl around however it wants to. For my third color, I'm using Autumn Blaze. So we're moving into the oranges and yellows here. And again, the same process. I have water already in my square, and then I'll add the color and swirl it around and get it into each of the 4 corners. So I have a complete square, and then it can kind of dry how it wants to. For my last square, I'm using Warm Sunshine. And the process again is the same. You can see that surface tension really building up there along the edges and how that color just doesn't want to go past it. That's really the cool thing about water and a really great science lesson if you have kids. Now that my panel's had a chance to air dry, it's ready to go, and I have some double-sided adhesive sheet on the back. I also have some die cut elements from the Bold Greetings die set and the Leaf Mix dies. Those are going to add the final touches to this project. So I like to use the double-sided adhesive when working with watercolor because it helps to make that panel lay perfectly flat on my card base. I have this panel cut down to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches, so there's a nice 1/4 inch border all the way around the panel. I add on my cardstock, and I just like to pull that piece of double-sided adhesive backing to reveal a little bit, get it in place, and then go ahead and peel and stick as I go. That keeps me from getting any kind of air bubbles and lays that piece down perfectly. Now I'll go ahead and add in my dies from the mixed leaf die set, and I'm just going to put down 2 little leaf elements to kind of make that background more of a background and make the leaves a little bit more of a focal point. The white on white really helps to keep them from competing with the background, but also adds that extra bit of texture and interest, so it's not just these 4 squares that I'm not quite sure what to do with. Once those 2 leaf pieces are in place, we'll go ahead and add in the sentiment die. And these I was able to die cut with the double-sided adhesive on the back. So that makes it really easy to place this. I like to use my craft pick to help place elements like this because it keeps my hands out of the way and I can really see what the element's going to look like when it's in place. So it just sticks a little bit to the back of the craft pick, and then I can use it to get things in place and then use my other hand to press down and secure it exactly where I'd like it to be. Because of everything going on in this card, it really doesn't need any more embellishment. This helps keep it nice, clean, and simple. Are you enjoying this video? Then how about giving it a thumbs up? I'd really appreciate it. For my next project, I wanted to add a little sparkle, so I'm using the Pink Brilliance glitter cardstock pack to create the Inchies. In this case, the Inchies are going to be 1 1/4 inch, and I have a piece of black mirror cardstock that is going to serve as a background for these pieces. I'm using some temporary adhesive to put the Inchies in place. This is kind of important so that way I get the spacing right from the get-go. I can move these pieces around without having to worry about them sticking onto the glossy cardstock, and because they're going to be covered up eventually, any residue that remains on the cardstock is not a big deal. You're not going to see it because it'll get covered up. Each of the Inchies already has a little piece of double-sided adhesive sheet on them, and that's going to make it super easy to put them together. Once I have 3 in place temporarily, I can start adhering them all down permanently. So I'll start with that 4th one here, and then work my way around, pulling off the adhesive. And as you can see, there's some residue there, but it doesn't matter because it's going to get covered up. So I can pull each one off in turn now and pull off the backing and adhere them permanently, and I'll end up with a perfect framed Inchie. As with the previous project, I don't want anything to really compete with those pink Inchies, so we'll be going for some black and white elements to finish off the card. I have a few more pieces from the Leaf Mix dies, and then I have a sentiment strip from the Essential Sentiment Strips dies. To assemble the card, the first thing I'm going to do is glue in the Inchie square grouping, and I'm going to put them closer to the top just like I did with the first card. So once I have that in place, I'll be able to add in the rest of the elements. After dry fitting the leaves and the sentiment, I thought it looked kind of plain, so I pulled out a fine liner pen and my ruler, and I'm going to add some extra lines around the Inchie cubes just to really frame them out. I'm doing this in a very sketchy way, so I don't care how long the lines are. If they extend a little longer on one side than the other, you'll see that there ends up being balance once I have all of the lines around it. So I'm going for one single line across that overlaps on each side, but then I thought I needed just a little bit of an extra embellishment, so I put a couple of shorter lines on the top and the bottom, opposing each other to keep balance. As you can see, the spacing between the lines kind of mimics the spacing between the Inchies on their frame. The next thing I'm going to do is add in my sentiment. And because I want it to extend across evenly, I could put a pencil mark in place, or I could just use my craft pick again to align that sentiment. By using the craft pick, I can hold it in place and align the sentiment evenly using the vertical lines that extend down beyond the Inchie squares. It makes it really easy to get that piece in place. The last thing I need to do is add in my leaf elements, and I make sure to put a generous amount of glue onto the elements because they are going to be sticking to some glitter. The glitter paper is virtually shed-free, which is really nice, so you're not getting glitter all over the place, but that also means that the elements that you're gluing on top are going to stick a little better because the glitter is not going to kind of help raise that up off of the piece. And there we go, 2 beautiful Inchie projects to get your creative juices flowing. Have you ever tried an Inchie project before? Share your successes or struggles with a comment down below. Also, we'd love to see what you create with this sketch, so don't forget to tag us at Pixel Mavens Retreat and at Altenew LLC. It's always inspiring to see how you're inspired by these sketches. I thank you for spending a few minutes with me today. It always means so much to have you stop by and spend a few minutes getting inspired by the projects that I create. I'll be back soon with another great sketch and a few more projects. But until next time, happy crafting.
Hello crafters, Jen here. For more tips, techniques, tutorials, and to discover which paper crafting products are right for you, subscribe to Altenew's YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching.